This is week number 4, in which we will be going over inline level positioning, meaning all elements that are not blocked on top of each other like these boxes are, but instead elements that are next to each other, such as these boxes in this case, or the button or the text area, or any text. Those elements, anything that's next to each other, can make use of these properties here that we will go over today. We are then able to horizontally position these inline level elements and also vertically. And what we will also be going over is overflow. What happens actually when, for example, we have a box and we give it a fixed height and a fixed width, and then we put content in there and that content is greater than the actual width or the actual height. Then this content will go over the box and therefore it will overflow. And this will give us a couple of very useful scenarios when we would actually want things to overflow. Such as, for example, what we will go over is this slider and any other slider, such as image galleries. Anything like this is horizontally, for example, overflowing. So this will be the topic of today, and what we will also be going over today is 3 more selectors that we will be discussing. So always what we do in HTML, we create content. Once again, let me mention it. We always create content by writing these elements, and then in CSS we select these elements and then we give them their dimensions and their positioning and also their styling. And in this week we are again under positioning, right here and right here. Before I go into, before we get started into this week, let me do a little bit a more detailed overview once again of what we have done so far, because now we are transitioning to the position area here, and that, as I mentioned, is rather the tricky part, and therefore in hope that nobody ever gets lost here. So let me therefore do a little bit more a detailed review of what we have done. And in particular what we have done last week was, it was all about dimensions. Everything, all the properties that are under here are ultimately determining how much space an element takes up on our website. For example, our header container here, which can best be explained again by opening our inspector. And here, this is our box. Here are its rules, and here is the box modal. And here we can identify, here that is the content area of our box, determined by width and height. And then comes the padding area or padding box, which is the gap inside the box. And then comes the border area or border box, which is the frame around the box. And then comes the margin, which is the area outside the box. And the gap outside the box. And all these boxes, all these areas here, all these 4 boxes are ultimately determining how much space an element takes up on our website, which is better known under the topic of the box modal. And we saw that padding and border are by default, they are added on top of width and height, on top of the content. And this is usually not what we want, because whenever we specify height and width, this is how we want that element to be. And we never want, when we add padding and border, to recalculate our width and height. Padding and border shall always be included, not only for this box, but any other box that we have and any other element. And therefore we selected all elements and gave them their box sizing property and the value border box. Meaning border area, border box and padding will already be included into the content as well. Because the default would be content box, meaning only content area is included. And we changed it to border box. And then what we have also discussed is that there is vertical margin collapsing, the effect that is taking place whenever we have block level elements that are blocked on top of each other, such as these container boxes. And then whenever we have a margin on bottom of this box and a margin on top of that box, meaning these margins are meeting each other. And then whenever margins vertically meet each other, then they collapse into each other. And the higher one, the higher value will always prevail. And this has a side effect, as we saw, which is that the most top margin here and the most bottom margin are traveling to the parent, to the yellow box in this case, and then will be applied outside there. And we can prevent it by setting a barrier on the yellow box, preventing that margin from traveling further up. And one option that we saw is we set a padding on the yellow box, which I already have here. So this is the actual side effect. Now the margin has traveled up, and we can, for example, set a padding on the yellow box here, a very tiny one that we cannot really see, but this is providing a barrier, therefore preventing that margin from traveling up. And we also saw that we can horizontally center a block level element, such as these boxes, elements that are blocked on top of each other, by using margin order on left and right. Let me mark this box because this is actually the sense, which gives us the sense always how the browser actually achieves this block level positioning. How are things blocked on top of each other? And the reason is because even though our box only goes until here, that area is still occupied by that box, meaning indirectly occupied by it, meaning whatever comes afterwards has to go down into the next line because it doesn't have any space here. This area belongs to the green box, and therefore the blue box has to go down. Same for the blue box in the next line, same thing, it occupies indirectly also this area, therefore whatever comes afterwards, meaning the next green box, also has to move down. This is how the browser achieves this block level positioning. And therefore, because this area is still taken by this green box, therefore it can also make use of it by, therefore, for example, setting the box gap outside on left and right to auto, margin auto, and then the box can make use of it and will be centered here in the middle. The browser will take this remaining space here, divide it by 2, put half of it on the right side and the other half on the left side. As we can see here still, here is half, here is half. And this also gives us this explanation of why that the browser, that this box still takes up this area here, also gives us the explanation for our dimension rules. Because if we do not specify a height for a container box, then it will be as high as its content. And if we don't specify a width, it will be as wide as the parent, or better said, it will be as wide as the content area of the parent. And that is the content area. If the yellow box had, for example, a padding or a border here, then the box just can't go any further. So, but in general, it will be as wide as the parent. And this effect changes once we allow boxes to be next to each other, because then these boxes are not occupying the entire area anymore. Instead, once we set this box to inline block, from being block to inline block, it only occupies that area and not this area indirectly anymore. And if we also set this box to inline block, meaning it will also only occupy that area and not the entire line, then if that box has enough space here, then it will move up. And these are then inline level elements. They became from block level elements from display block to display inline block. And therefore, once two boxes are next to each other, then this width effect is not taking place anymore. Then the width, if we don't specify it, will not be as wide as the parent, because now it has a neighbor. Now there is somebody next to it. So instead, that width will then be, if we don't specify it, then the box will be as wide as the content. So this rule changes to the exact same rule as the height. The height, if we don't specify it, will be as high as the content. And if we don't specify the width, then it will be as wide as the content. And the last thing that we, also one more thing that we have discussed last week is that we cannot really target text. So if we only wanted that one single word here to have a, for example, a background color, then what we need to do, we need to wrap this one word in between an element, the span element that we introduced last week, which is an inline element that cannot have a width and a height. And then we can target this span element in which this one word is then inside, and then we can give it a background color. But we always need an element because we cannot really target text. It's not possible. And that was actually not 100% true. And this is where we are getting started now into this week, because there are actually two pseudo selectors that we are now going over that can be attached to the original selection. And that allows us to actually select text, such as the first letter or the first line. So what we will be doing now is I will be selecting this green box, the parent, and then I will be attaching this pseudo selector after the selection, selecting the first line, and secondly also the first letter of this very first line. So let me get started and let me go to our header inner container, which is the green box, and that one I am now selecting, and I am using now this pseudo selector, which can always be attached. Those ones that can be attached, they have always these colons there, and this one that we are now using is actually using 2 colons. What I do not want to explain right now, but we will go over it later. The point here is that we can actually have 2 options here to select some text by using these pseudo selectors. So let me go for first letter here, and also let me do the same thing for first line. First letter and the other one for first line. And now we can specify here what we want the first line or the first letter to have. However, the limitation here is that we can only give the first letter and the first line only stylistic things. So meaning I cannot use now padding or anything that has to do with dimensions or positioning. So only stylistic things such as, for example, the first line shall have a text decoration of underline, for example. Meaning now the first line will be underlined if I place this code in the correct file, which I didn't. So right in here it shall be. Here we go, now the first line is underlined. Whatever that means in detail, I mean, it makes sense what it means, but this is not what I want to go over. Only what I want to bring across now is that we can actually select text by using this pseudo first line and the other one first letter, which I will now give a greater font size of, for example, 20 pixel. And now the first letter only has increased. Nevertheless, these are the only 2 options to select text, and we can only give it appearance. No positioning and also no dimensions. And now in this week, let's get started with our actual properties that we will go over now. And one that we start with is text-indent. And that one takes the first line of text and moves it in horizontally to the right. It indents it. But how is it possible? We just discussed that text cannot really be selected. So what we will be doing, we will be selecting the parent, and then it will be inherited down to the text. So we are now discussing inheritance. So I will now do this setting of text indent of, for example, 20 pixels, so we can see the effect straight away. And now it got applied because these properties that have a reddish background here, they get inherited. And meaning, what does that mean? Let's go into our HTML. We always move things in, so we immediately see what is inside what. And this text here is a child. Text is also considered to be a child of an element. And this is a child of that element. And that element we have given text indent. And inheritance is all the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, meaning all the descendants, all the parties down the hierarchy will ultimately receive this setting that I have just set. Now there is only one child in there, so the only one that has now received it is the very first line here. But this is what inheritance is, because we cannot really select the text. So the idea behind is inheritance. So we just set it on the parent, and then whatever is inside will receive this actual setting. It inherits it. Let me give you another example of inheritance that we will come across later once we go over stylistic things, such as, for example, the font family. Font family is this one here. What family our text shall ultimately have. And that family later, of course, we want to be used by the entire text on the entire website. And therefore inheritance is also taking place, because that will allow us to later set the font family only on the body element. As, for example, let me give it the value fantasy, the family fantasy. And that one will then be inherited by everybody else, because the body is the element that has the entire content in it. Meaning I have now set the font family here, and all the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all the hierarchy down, the entire descendants will ultimately receive that setting, which is a very wonderful thing, because otherwise what we needed to do, if that wasn't the case, then we need to give that font family just to each and every element that is on our website, which is of course horrible and would be insane. So inheritance has two purposes. That is one purpose, so we only need to do that setting once. And the other purpose of inheritance is because we cannot really select text. So what we do that setting on the parent, and the text, which is a child of that box, will inherit that setting. So this is inheritance. So therefore all inherited properties are always done on the parent, such as text-indent. Now let me straight away go to two other properties right here, such as word and letter spacing, which are also inherited. Word spacing of, for example, 7 pixel, and let me give it letter spacing as well of 7 pixel. And here we go. Word and letter spacing is also positioning inline-level elements horizontally. So we are doing horizontal gaps in between here, in between the letters and also in between the words. So this is what word and letter spacing do, as the name already implies. And these three properties, text-indent, word and letter spacing, of course, like all the others that we will now go over, all the others here can also be applied to boxes, because boxes are treated as if they were text by the browser. This is now, as soon as elements are next to each other, the browser thinks this is one word and this is one word. Therefore we have a white space in between here, because the browser always leaves one white space in between each word. So the text the words do not move on top of each other, and therefore the text would become unreadable. And this is not text, but the browser treats it as text. Each of them is considered to be one word, each box consisting of one single letter. And not only these boxes, but any element that's next to each other, such as those ones here as well, the button and the text area. So now let me do this setting, all the three of them, word spacing, letter spacing, and text-indent, also for the first line here. So we do it on the parent or on the yellow box here, because it's all inherited properties are always done on the parent. First of all, let me create another box so we have another line, because text-indent is only applied to the first line, so we can see the actual effect here. So it's done on the parent, therefore on the yellow box, on the main container, which has the ID main container. And now let me give that one a text-indent first of all. Text-indent of, again, same thing, 20 pixel. And now the first line got indented. And here we can see inheritance a little bit more closer. Now the text that is inside these boxes actually, which is a grandchild of the yellow box, this text, also got indented here. Now let me use word spacing now. Word spacing of 7 pixels, same thing. What happens? Now the words, each of them is considered to be one word by the browser now, because they are next to each other, and this gap increased now. So word spacing in between the words. And here we can see inheritance took place as well. In between the words inside these boxes, that same effect now took place as well. Now word and letter spacing is exactly the same now for these boxes at least, because each of these boxes is considered by the browser to be one word consisting of one single letter. So nothing will change if I now change that to letter spacing. It will be concerning the boxes, it will be the same. That gap will not change. But the text inside them, who inherit also that property, will change now. Now it's not word spacing for them, now it's letter spacing. So now there is a gap in between the letters. And of course, now if we don't want that actually inside here, we actually only wanted the boxes to have word, letter spacing and text indent, but not inside these boxes. So what we then need to do, we need to go to the parent of this text, which are the boxes, the green box, and the parent of this text, which is the blue box. And both of them share the class child container. So I'm doing this setting now for all these boxes. And here we set text indent to 0 again, and then everything is fine for these boxes. And what we can also do is letter spacing, because for letter spacing, for example, how wide are the letters apart by default? Do we set it to 0 now? Sometimes we don't really know. So the value that we can use is initial. Initial, same for text-indent and for any other property that is inherited. Once we go to initial, it means go to the original. And then everything is fine. And initial can be seen as the default values that the browser always uses. Even though there is a tiny difference, which I will briefly touch on next week, but it's nothing relevant to us. It can be considered as the default. That is, in my opinion, okay to think in this way. And initial always goes back to the original. And now inheritance can also be forced. Let me go to CSS, such as, for example, the background. That one is not inherited, only the ones that have a reddish background. Nevertheless, we can force inheritance as well, even though that doesn't make sense too much right now because our website is not yet dynamic, what we will be doing with JavaScript later. But it fits now, that topic fits now, so I want to show you quickly that it is possible. So for example, our header inner container, the green box here, that one we have given a light green background. And if I set that one now to inherit, that value we can always give to any property, then it will inherit the background color, in this case from its parent, and it will also be red. So this is always possible. Later when we have things dynamic, when we change our content and our appearance of that content dynamically with JavaScript up on an event, for example, as we discussed in week number 1, so then it makes sense to use it, but for now not. So that was just to complete now this value that can also be used because we are just discussing inheritance. So let me bring it back, and now let's go over the next property that we want to discuss, a property that actually now makes sense to use on these boxes. Because word spacing, letter spacing, and text indent didn't really make sense to use on these boxes. We can achieve gaps here by using margin, for example, outside the green box, or we can also use padding inside the yellow box to move things in. So we have these options that we have discussed last week. Those 3 properties right now didn't make too much sense to be used on boxes. They made sense though for text to be used. And now let's go into text align. And text align will allow us to horizontally center inline level elements. We already know that we can horizontally center block level elements because by using margin order on left and right, because they still own this space. But of course we cannot use it on inline level elements for the reasons discussed. But now comes the solution that we can use there. And therefore I have prepared already something for this week that I want to now make use of, and this is another block level element here. That one shall serve as our navigation box. So all the links, the navigation links shall be in here, such as, for example, simple links such as this one. So no drop downs, those ones we will be going over in week number 8, just simple links we want in there. And for repetition, let us just create those links now. So links are created by using the element A, the anchor element, and those ones always must have an hyperlinks reference attribute, and the value is yet unknown. I don't know where to link to, so I just leave it empty for now. And let me insert here week 1, let me create 4 of them, week 3 and week 4. And now let us take a look first of all, how this looks like. Here we can see what we already saw down here, because here we also have a link, that anchor elements are by default are inline level elements. They are next to each other. The question now is whether they are inline block and can still have a width and a height, or whether they are text elements and only are displayed inline, not inline block, inline, and cannot have a width and a height. So let us just select those four anchor elements and give them their width and height and some styling so we can see them, and then we will find out whether they are display inline or inline block. When they can have a width and a height, then they are inline block. When not, then they are display inline. So how do we select those 4 anchor elements here? And we can, from what we know so far, is we can give them a class, all of them a common class value, and then select them by their class value that we have given them. But another easier option is we select the parent. So now comes our last selector for today. We are selecting the parent, and then we say take all the children that are in here that are of type anchor. So this is what we are doing now. So I am now using our nav container, which is right here. So select nav container all the children, and that is this angle bracket. That is all the children that are of type, element type A. So this is the child selector, the last selector I want to introduce today. So meaning select all anchor elements that are children of the element with the ID nav container. And now let's give it a width of 100 pixel, and let's give it a height of the exact same height as the parent, 35 pixel, meaning we can remove it from the parent because it will be as high as its content, which are the anchor elements that I will now make 35 pixel, so it will be fine. And now let me give them a border on the right side, so they are divided up a little bit, 1 pixel, solid black. And now we will see whether width and height will now have an effect or not. And that will tell us whether anchor elements by default are inline or inline block. And they did not receive any width and any height, because they are in fact display inline by default. And the reason for this is it roots back in history, back in the early days of the web. There were no such things as boxes on a website. There was text on websites, and inside that text there was links. So therefore links are considered to be text elements, and therefore they shall not have a width and a height, so they do not move away from the line, making the line unreadable. This is the reason behind it. It's an historic reason, and of course we can always change it. So all we need to do is change it to inline block, meaning now the anchor elements will still be in the same line, but now they can have a width and a height. And here we can see it now got applied to them. And now let's go to the actual property that we wanted to go over, which is the text align property. Now we want that text in here to be centered in the middle. And text align again is an inherited property. So we do it on the parent of this text. And the parent of this text are the anchor elements. So let me bring it down once again so we can see it. So this is the text. This is a child of this element. And once we give text align to that element with a certain value, this text will inherit it, because we cannot really select the text for that reason. And now let me give that one a text align value. Text align by default it's left, as we saw on this website. So by default everything in this box now is to the left. And here we have the exact same options as in a Word document. So in a Word document, same thing, everything is to the left. Then what we also have is center, right, and justify. And we can use all these 4 values as well on the web inside our CSS. And justify is this newspaper style. So meaning the browser ultimately shall make as much space in between the words so that the line always ends at the same position here. That is justify. But for now, what we want to have is not justify, we want center. We want our text inside the anchor elements to be centered. And now, straight away, let us also do this for our container boxes here. And again, it's an inherited property. So inherited properties are done on the parent, so therefore on the yellow box again, and which its ID's main container. And let me first of all remove text indent and letter spacing so we can see the complete effect here. And let me give it text align to the center. And here we go. Now our boxes, our inline level elements are now positioned in the center. This is our solution to center inline level elements, which solution for block level elements is margin auto on left and right, which inline level elements cannot have. So now we have both solutions, the solution for block level elements to center them with margin auto on left and right, and for inline level elements by using the text align property and using center, the value center. And now we will be going over vertically positioning things and also referring to this text and to these boxes. This text here is now horizontally centered, and of course we also want it to be vertically centered. And the property in charge here is the line height property. Again, it's a property that is inherited with a reddish background here. And the line height is determining, as the name implies, it's the height of the line. And to be more precise, it's the height of the line box, which I am not able to mark right now. This one, that is the height, that is the line box, the gray area that we can see here. So the line box cannot really be seen unless I just marked it, but the gray area is the line box. And the default value for line height is normal. And normal means make the line box as high as the content requires it, so that the content is fits inside that box. So meaning right now we have a font size of 11 inside this Word document. Now let me give this one single word, let me give that one a font size of 24. And now the line height, the text, the box, line box has now increased in height. Because it always is, by default, it's normal in the web. The value used is normal. And it will always, same as in a Word document here, it will always make it as high so that the entire content fits inside it. And this is what we will now be using on the web as well. But before, of course, we can also change it manually. So we cannot only leave it as normal, meaning the content determines the line box's height. We can also change it manually, of course. So now we have changed it manually, and this is now the line box's height as we have set it. And the text that is inside, or the content that is inside this line box, the gray area, is in a Word document positioned always towards the top. And that is determined by the baseline. And the baseline, once again, is something that we cannot really see, but we can indirectly see it, because the baseline is always where the text sits on. There is an invisible line. And in a Word document, that line, that baseline, is always positioned in a way that the text is towards the top of that line box. Now let's go into web. Let's go into here and let us now consider our link here. Let me first of all mark the area in which that link is inside. So the anchor element, we have given that one a height of 35 pixel. So that is the box, that is the anchor box. And inside there is text, and there is also a line box. And the height of that line box is determined by the content, which is the text. And the line box is as high in order to fit that, the line box is as high as the content requires it, in order that the content fits inside it. Meaning, if I increase now the font size of this week 1 of this text, then the line box will also increase then accordingly, so that the text still fits in that line box. And of course, we can also, same as in a Word document, we can also change that manually. We can make it as high as we want to, that line height. And now, for example, let us do that line height, set it to the exact same height as the box itself, meaning to 35 pixel. And then let us take a look what happens. So the anchor right here, they have a height of 35. So we are targeting the parent again from the text. It's inherited. And now let me set the line height to 35 pixel. To the exact same value that we used for the height. And now let's take a look what happens. And the text is perfectly centered. And in order to see that a little bit better, let me remove the underline decoration, which is always given to anchor elements. Let me remove that one. Text decoration none, which doesn't matter what that means for now. So here we can see it's right in the center. So in contrast to a Word document, which in a Word document, the baseline is always positioned in a way that the text is always towards the top. And on the web, the baseline is always positioned in a way that the text is always in the center. So irrespective of the font size, if I now increase the font size, then the baseline will move further down, so that the text will always be, that the baseline will always cause the text to be positioned in the center. So to keep it very simple now, all we need to do always is, when we want to center text inside a box, is to set the line height to the exact same height as the height itself of the box. And then that will automatically center things. Let me now increase though the font size here, so we can actually see that the baseline then adjusts always font size of, for example, 25 pixels. Now here, the text nevertheless, even though I increased the font size, the text is still in the middle. So the baseline is always the one where the text sits on, now adjusted. It moved further down so that the text ultimately always will be positioned in the center of that box. Now let's go into our boxes and get further familiar with line height. Let me therefore first of all remove one of these boxes and also the content that is inside the other boxes, for the reason I will briefly explain in a minute. So this is what we have here, and what is the line box's height at the moment. We have not yet set anything manually, so right now the value that is used for the line height inside here is normal, meaning it is as high as it is required in order to fit the content of that line inside that line box. Meaning this is how high the line box right now is. And now when I increase, for example, the blue box in its height, or any of these two boxes, then of course the line height increases as well, in order to fit always the content inside the line box. And of course we can also here manually adjust it to as high as we want to. And now once again let us set it to the exact same height of the box, the line height. This yellow box has a height of 300 pixels. So now let us set this line height to also 300 pixels, which is right here, minimum height. Let me now set the line height of that yellow box also to 300 pixels. And now these two boxes are not really centered. So what does the browser always do? When we set the line height to the exact same height, it always adjusts the baseline to a position that the current font size, the text with the current font size, will be centered. So let me therefore insert here a random letter. And here we can see that letter is right in the center. So this is what the browser does, meaning the baseline right now is right here. And everything sits on the baseline right now. It always adjusts it in that way. It positions the baseline in that way that the font size of the current font size always will be in the center, such as the S here. And those two boxes, they also sit on the baseline. As we can see, they sit by default on the baseline. Now, can we change their position? And yes, we can by using our next property, and that one is vertical align. And here we see, first of all, it's not an inherited property. Meaning if we wanted, we can change that position, this box's position, inside the line height somehow, but also this one, individually. So we are not setting it on the parent. Vertically align is set individually, can be set on each element on the line, on each of them individually. So let me therefore target them nevertheless both at the same time now, because they are sharing the class child container, both of them. And let me go down here, and now let me use vertical align, which allows us to determine the position of the elements inside the line box. And now by default they are positioned on the baseline, as we just saw. Here's the baseline. They are on the baseline, sitting on the baseline. And what we want now is we want them in the middle of the baseline. So they are ultimately right centered in the middle. And here we go, middle. Now these boxes are centered. And the other two values that we have are top and bottom. But what does top mean? Top of what? Top of the baseline? No, not top of the baseline, because that one is already baseline. That is, now they are on top of the baseline. So once we use now the value top, they will be at the top of the line box. The line box is this now, 300 pixels, the entire area here. And they are now positioned towards the top of the line box. And same for bottom. It's nothing to do with the baseline. They will be now at the bottom of the line box. Let me now go back into normal. Let me first of all remove the let me go back to vertical align baseline first of all, and now let me also increase the height of the second box, of the blue one only. Let me give that one a height of 150 pixels, and inside here let me go back also what the line height. Let me remove the line height again from our 300 pixels. So the value used now for line height will be normal. I have now removed my manual setting. So once again, we are back to original. The only difference is that the blue boxes now I have increased in size. So the value used for line height is normal, meaning the line height, the line box's height will be as high in order to fit the content of the line. Meaning this is now the line height right now. And vertically align is always, that's what we need to understand, is that vertically align is dependent upon the line height, whether its values, once we set it, whether they will work then ultimately. Because if we set, for example, a line height now, vertically align, if we vertically align now this blue box to the top, to the bottom, or to the middle, it will not work. Because it already takes up the entire line height here. So there is no way that it can be positioned in any way. It takes up the entire area. So there is no leeway. There is no room for it to move in any direction. So however, if we now take vertically align the green box to top, bottom, or middle, that one can be positioned because it has this leeway here. So vertically align is completely dependent upon the line height. And once an element takes up already the entire area of the line height, then it cannot be changed by vertically align. It cannot move. It's already taking up the entire area. So let us go for an example, and let me target both of these boxes again, and let me use, which I reset to baseline, let me use now middle. Now the blue box will not change, but the green box will, because it has this leeway here. And whatever value that I am using now, it will work, but only for the green box. Because the blue box is already taking up the entire line height, it cannot move. So that is important to understand, that vertical align is completely dependent upon the line height, whether it works once we set it or not. Now the question, why did I remove the text at the very beginning inside these boxes? And things are in actual fact a little bit more complicated if we wanted to understand the deep sense behind how the browser thinks. Because if I insert now some text here, before I first, let me reset it to baseline to the default value. So now one element has text inside it. And this behavior is completely strange, appears completely strange. Let me now remove that text here from that box and let me insert it into the other box. What happens then? Completely strange behavior. Now that one moves up, that one goes somewhere. So this behavior happens because each box, each element on the line actually has its own baseline as well, which we do not need to worry about. All we need to worry about, or all we need to also, what we need to know is, as soon as we change the value from baseline to whatever we want, such as top, then everything will be fine again. It always depends how much content is in here and how much content is in here. Even though if I inserted some text here, but I inserted some more text in here that goes over 2 lines, for example, then this strange effect will happen. But the point here is, all we need to know is that we can always remedy this strange behavior by setting vertical align, changing it from its default baseline to either top, bottom, or middle, whatever we need. And this is what we usually do always whenever we have elements set to display inline block. then straight away we are using vertical align as well. So those go hand in hand. Otherwise we will be encountering this strange behavior there. Let me, for example, add some more text only inside this first anchor here, inside the first anchor element. Only 2 S's here. And now things are completely messed, because that one now has more content than the other one. So things are messed up. So all we need to know here is, all we need to grasp is that we just need to change vertical align, and then this mess will be okay again. So what I'm going over now is here, right in here, display inline block, because all these anchors are next to each other. Whenever we use display inline block, let's straight away go into vertically aligning them how we want them, in this case to the top, which is most often the case. And here we go, everything is normal again. So we don't need to worry about the strange behavior. Let us now repeat a little bit this vertical align, the line height, and also the text align. This property, line height and vertical align. I have already prepared something else for today, and which is these elements here that I out-commented. And let me remove the text that we have inside our header inner container. And let me place that one right here. Let me remove that one. And what I have created is this one here. Now there is text decoration underline, which I briefly want to remove, that we have set on the first line. Here we go. And let me also remove the word and letter spacing here. And also the text indent. Okay, now. So here is a logo. And that logo, or any image that we include on our website, which we have seen only briefly, we have an entire separate week on images, etc. But whenever we include images with our image property here, image element, sorry, with our image element, then the image will by default have its original size. So what I have given this image now here is a height of 60 pixel, and then the width adjusts accordingly. But the point here is, because I have given that image a height of 60 pixel, the area, the green box is 80 pixel, and it has 10 pixel here padding and 10 pixel here. And by me having given that image a 60 pixel height, it will by default also be centered in the middle. So padding can also be used to center things. So line height we just saw can be used, but padding as well. We just need to make that image then a certain amount of space. So when we have 10 pixel here, 10 pixel here, or depending on how much padding we set, we can also always then center things as well. And what we now want is, we want that image, that logo, to be on the left side, and everything else that is here we want on the right side. And how can we achieve this? Text align is our property again that we are talking here. Text align to the left, to the right, to the center. And this one is an inherited property, text align, so we do it on the green box, on the parent, and they will then inherit it. And of course, once I now go for header inner container and now give it a text align to the right, then everything will move to the right, of course. But what we want is the logo here and the other things on the right. So how can we achieve this? And we can by creating 2 other boxes in here. So at least from the perspective what we know so far, what we are now doing is we are creating 2 boxes next to each other inside the green box. Make them display inline block first of all, so they are next to each other and can still have a width and a height. And we will make them then vertically aligned to the top straight away, so there is no mess. And what we will also be doing is we remove the white space, because as soon as things are next to each other, then there is a white space in between, so which we need to remove. Otherwise this one has 50% width and this one plus white space, and then this one doesn't have any room anymore and has to go down into the next line. So this is what we are creating now, 2 boxes next to each other. That logo goes in that box, goes right here into that box, while all the other things remain here. And when that logo is in that box, it will by default be text aligned to the left. That's always default. So the logo will be fine. However, these elements will also be text aligned to the left in this box. and those ones we change to text align right, so they are towards the right. So let me create 2 boxes now. Div ID, let me give it IDs, header inner left container, and let me call the other one header inner right container. So let me duplicate this line of code, and this one shall be the right container. Now we have 2 boxes, and now let me remove the white space first of all. So that one is gone, and we can give both of them a width of 50%. And now let me move the image inside the logo, inside the first box, and everything else let me move inside the second box, right in here. And now let me target them both and give them their width and height. So I want to target the header inner left container, the element with the ID header inner left container, and the other one as well. And let me target, or let me actually put that right here. And I want this, and I want to do now 2 selections at the same time. So what I can do is use a comma. So that is one option, and then the other one, header inner right container. And now let me give them both a width of 50% and a height. Now, what height do I want to give it? I want to give it the height that it fits inside the green box. Now the green box has a padding of 10 pixel on top and bottom, and a height of 80 pixel. And I am now giving it 60 pixel, so it fits right in there. 60 pixel, and now I'm using, of course, display inline-block, because div elements, div division, they are container boxes, they are by default block, and now I'm setting them to inline-block, and now straight away vertically align them to the top, even though let me out comment this so we can see the behavior here. And first of all, let us inspect. And yeah, I've set text align to the right. Let me remove that. So by default, text align is to the left. So here we have everything. Here's the logo, which is fine already. And here are the other things, which we need to set text align to the right. First of all, let me give those 2 boxes once again a background color so we can follow a little bit more closely. So this one shall have a background color of gray, and the other one shall have a background color of light gray. And here we go. Here are our 2 boxes. And here we can see there is this mess going on again, because we are having things display inline block. Always a recommended way, always straight away vertically align to where we want to have them. Then we never encounter this mess. In this case, we both want them to be on the top, and here they are now, perfectly as we wanted them. Now the content inside this light gray box we now want to be positioned on the right. Therefore we're using text align, which is an inherited property. We set it on the box itself, on the light gray box, and that one is right here, and text align to the right. And now these elements are on the right side. And now let's go into vertical align. Now we can see that these elements are positioned kind of all over the place. What is the line height right now? The line box's height. The line box's height right now, the line height is normal, meaning it is as high in order to fit the entire content inside it. And this is right now the line height. And here we can see that each element here still has leeway. So we can make use of vertically align them. We can make use of it because every element in here has a leeway. And therefore, let us give them vertically align. And now, once again, let's pay attention. Vertical align is not inherited. We are not setting it on the gray box now. What we will be doing, we are setting them individually. We need to set them on the element itself, vertical align. So what we will be doing now is we won't be giving each of them a class or an ID. We again use the child selector. So take this box and then all elements in there that are of, for example, type image. However, we also have one of type input. That's an input element. These are images. And therefore, we already know that selector though. Let me go now and select this box and now child selector. All the children that are not of any type, but we want all the asterisk selector, all children there. And so once again, all elements here, all elements, this is what it says, all elements that are children of the element with the ID header inner right container. And in here now, for all of them, we go for vertical align to the middle. And now they are almost perfectly as we wanted them to have. There is a tiny little bit difference right now, which I go over in a second. Let us first go into line height. For example, if we wanted those elements now in the middle of the box, or at least somehow in the middle. So what do? We go for line height. So the line height right now is normal, meaning it is as high, the line box's height is as high in order to fit the content inside it. And now let us manually change it to the exact height of the box, meaning those elements that are inside here, the content that is inside here, will be in the center, or at least almost, as we will see in a second. And line height once again is inherited. So that one again we do on the parent, line height. The reason why we do vertically align is not inherited is because we can actually position each of them individually if needed. So vertical align is not inherited. And line height, let me set it to 60 pixels, same as the box's height. And here we go. Now the text here is centered, almost centered here, the things. One point that I'm not happy with now, and that we should, that is an important thing because we make use of this quite often, is that we often have an icon, an image, and next to it we have some text. And this is exactly why I inserted some text here. Because this text is not right in the center of this image, of this icon, if that one, yeah, of this image. Let me change that letter to lowercase, first of all, to a lowercase s. And here we go. Now it's perfectly centered. But this is usually not what we want. We want an uppercase s when we are starting a sentence. And the reason why this is not vertically aligned perfectly in the middle is because that appearance, that selection we have done, didn't affect the text. Because what we did is select all elements that are children of that element with the ID header inner container. But text is not an element. And that is what we must pay attention to, because it is often the case that we are positioning an image and then right next to it text. So what we need to do whenever we select the elements, we need to wrap this text also inside an element. So therefore this text is also, it will also be selected now in that selection. All elements, meaning now also the span element, also the text that we just wrapped inside the span element. And let me now reload. Maybe we have seen it briefly. Now it's perfectly centered in the middle. And now everything is as we wanted it to have. Now let us go into overflow. Overflow, that is those properties here, those ones. Before we continue here, let us go for overflow. And overflow means what happens if we have text or any other content, boxes, whatever content it is, inside a box, and we have given that green box a fixed height or a fixed width, and then that content goes over the box when it is greater, whatever content it is, in this case text. So let me insert some further text inside here. Let me, in order that things are then overflowing. And now there is more text than the box can fill, then there is space for the text. Therefore, this text is now going over the box. It overflows. And right now, things are overflowing in the vertical direction, which is the Y direction. The horizontal direction is the X direction. So we are now looking at overflow Y. And the default value that is used on this child container, this is where the text is overflowing. So let me go to the child container, which actually is where I am now selecting both boxes here. And that one, let me give a overflow Y, because it's horizontally overflowing. And by default, it is visible. as it is, because right now this text is visible outside. And now let me change it. For example, another value that we have here is hidden. And now the text is gone. And this is of course a bad thing. I mean, the text is gone, then the person cannot read on. So another option that we have here is to use scroll, meaning the text is now not overflowing anymore and it's also not hidden. Instead, that text can still be viewed by a scroll bar then. And we can see here, because the selected, both of these boxes share the class child container. And this one also received a scroll bar. Even though there is not even text in there, there is no overflowing content. And therefore, we usually never use the scroll value. Instead, what we use is the auto value. And that means, hey browser, only attach a scroll bar when there is actually overflowing content. Meaning as soon as I reload the page now, this scroll bar is gone because there is no overflowing content. Only the scroll bar is applied here because there is overflowing content. And what we usually also do is we don't specify X and Y even though they exist. We go straight away for overflow, which is the shortcut and which refers to whether it be vertical or horizontal, doesn't matter. So this is the usual way to go. What we usually see out there and what we usually do. So straight away the shortcut of overflow. And with the result of the exact same effect. Now when would we use something like this? And now let's go into two examples. And one example is on this website when we want to save space. So for example, there are quite a couple of videos here. And if those videos were not accessible by a scroll bar, instead they would be listed here, then those videos would pretty much go from all the way top to all the way to the bottom. So in order to save space, we sometimes give a certain box a fixed height, it shall not go any further, and then whatever is in there, the content can then be viewed by a scroll bar. So this is one good reason. Let me inspect the element here, and that is the viewport, and let us inspect the rules. So right here there is a fixed height of 135 pixel. This area that is now shaded. 135 pixel and overflow set to auto. Same thing here, straight to auto. Only apply the scroll bar when there is overflowing content, and overflow whether it be horizontal or vertical, whether it be X or Y, doesn't matter. And now let's go for another example. Let's go for our HTML element. If we see the shadow, it's the entire area. It's our root element. It consists everything else, the head and the body. The root element. And here we can see a scroll bar that we can see on so many websites. This is how we can access the content that is further down. And this is exactly what is set on the HTML element. There is also by default, there is overflow set to auto. That's the default value. And of course, if I now change that one to hidden, then the scroll bar will be gone and the content that is further down cannot be accessed anymore. So this is another reason of overflow being in existence. And now let's go over vertically overflowing things, horizontally overflowing content. So this was vertical, now let's go horizontal. And the property that first of all causes content to go over horizontally is the white space property. And that one again has by default a value of normal. So this property determines whether when the content reaches the end of the line, whether things shall continue in the next line or whether things shall continue in the same line and overflow horizontally. And this value white space, as the name says already, is not only in charge of that, but also on two other things that we have discussed a couple of times already. One thing is the browser removes all white space by default when we have it, and also all line breaks. And this is what this property is in charge of as well. So it is in charge of, here we define what happens to white space, to line breaks, and also what happens when the content reaches the end of the line horizontally, whether things shall continue in the next line or whether things shall continue in the same line and overflow. And there are a couple of values that are in place here. A couple of values can be used and right here. So by normal is default, and we will only go over those two here. Because usually, why would we want white space to still exist? Why would we want white space not to be removed? And also, why would we want line breaks not to be removed? There is not many examples that exist when we want to do this. And therefore, if we are thinking now, yeah, but maybe when I'm writing a newspaper article or something for a new paragraph or something, or if I want to go into a new line, this is done differently. This has nothing to do with this one here. So this is just for white space and line breaks in general. This is different from paragraphs and things, what we are going over later. So let's go over pre first of all, which is exactly the opposite of normal. So all of them are somehow a mix. One removes white space, the other one doesn't. One removes line breaks, the other one doesn't. One breaks into a new line when the end of the line is reached, the other one doesn't. So these are the values here that give us control over that. And one of which is pre, which does exactly the opposite of normal. And let us use this one now. And again, it's an inherited property. So let me do it on the parent of the text, which is the child container. And let me now use white space pre. And let us take a look at the effect. So first of all, the first effect is the content is not going into the second line anymore. Instead, it's going over. And because I still have this overflow property set, therefore there's right now a scroll bar attached, but usually it's not. So here we can see the text, it's going over. And the second thing that pre is now doing, the opposite of normal, it also keeps the white spaces, as we can see here. The white spaces are now kept that I made. And also if I now bring here into a new line, this one is also kept. It keeps white space and line breaks. And now because I have still text align center somewhere, therefore these things are centered. Let me remove that text align center, which is inherited now down. So here we go. So here that white space got kept and that line break got kept. And by bringing the text into a new line, there's of course also now white space here. That is also considered to be white space and will be kept as well. So there is no real usage here. But there will be usage later when we go into databases, when we want to view the results from databases, but which is still a little bit ahead of us. So we don't need to worry pretty much. Why would we want white spaces to be kept or line breaks? Doesn't make too much sense. What makes sense though is we want things to overflow horizontally. There are a couple of really good use cases for this, as we will see in a second. Now this pre setting here, this white space pre-value also exists as an HTML element. Let me introduce that one as well because it just fits as we already discussed it. And whatever text we write in this element, the white space and the line breaks will be kept here as well. Same thing. So this one also exists as simple HTML element. And now let's go into an element that a value that we make use of often, and that is no wrap. This one collapses white space and also line breaks as we want them, but it does not bring the text when it reaches the end of the line or the content, it does not bring it to the next line, it goes over horizontally. And here we go. So white spaces are now removed. Line breaks are also removed, but the content does not go into the next line when it reaches the end of the box. And now what is the use case for this? And the actual use case is more relevant when we take a look here at container boxes. So let me insert another container box here. And now let's do this setting on these container boxes, meaning it's inherited white space. So we do it on the yellow box again. So on the yellow box, which is main container, and right on there, I want now the white space to be no wrap. No wrap. And here we go. Text, the box is now going over the yellow box instead of going into the next line. And now let's go into the actual use case. And any slider that we see out there is made in that way. Such as this one. There is actually further content coming here, but that content is hidden. Overflow set to hidden, horizontally. Overflow set to hidden, and then it can be accessed by JavaScript, then with the effect of JavaScript by clicking here. And what does JavaScript do? It can change our content and the appearance, the CSS. It can change HTML and CSS. This is what JavaScript can do. And it can change it over time or in reaction to an event, such as a mouse clicking here. This is what JavaScript does. And what actually happens here is, let us inspect this element here, and then we can first of all see the overflow hidden. Let us remove that, and here we can see first of all, here it's actually going over, but it's set to auto overflow hidden, so it will not be shown this overflowing content. And once I click now here, now it's overflowing on that side. So this is the actual effect. So let us go into how something like this is built, because we can already build this by using the properties that we now have learned. So let us go into that at least visually here. So what do we have? What do we need to do first of all? We need to create one box. One box, and inside this box we make 3 other boxes. 2 for the arrow keys and 1 for the actual content. Let me use green. So we create 3 boxes in here. 1 for this arrow key, 1 for the for the area in which the content will be displayed without the overflow. So right in here. And then 1 more box for the other arrow key, meaning 3 boxes next to each other by using display inline-block. And then we already vertically align them to the top, so there is no strange behavior. They are not strangely positioned. They are right next to each other. And what we now do is we create another box inside this box. First of all, actually, how do we center those angle brackets? By either using line height, or if we are using an image for that one, for this angle bracket, if that is actually an image, what we can also do besides line height, for example, if that image has 40 pixel and the box here is 80 pixel high, then what we can do, 20 pixel on top padding, 20 pixel on bottom padding, and that one will be automatically centered then. So these are options that we have. And now let's go into another box that we now want, and that box is right inside that main box here. And that box actually goes all over. It has the entire content in it. However, the box in which this red box that I'm drawing now is inside, so the green box, the major box, that one has set overflow to hidden, the green one. And therefore, whatever I am now, however wide I will make this red box, it will only be visible until here. And whatever comes later will not be visible. And this is overflow. And then what happens here? There is margin. This red box is right, left, a gap outside this red box towards the green box. The gap is 0, meaning margin on the left is 0. And now this margin changes from being 0 to minus the area in which the visible area in which the visible boxes are inside. For example, 800 pixels. So here is margin 0, and then it changes from margin 0 to margin minus 800. Here we go. And then things are moving over from margin 0 to margin minus 800. But things are not happening from 0 straight away to minus 800. Instead, things are happening over time. Every few milliseconds, it's changing from 0 towards minus 800 a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And then after 2 seconds, or maybe 1 second, this entire process is complete. This is how we get this sliding effect. Let me now use another example of negative margins, actually, and that is on our magnifier here. This one we can insert. We want actually in here, right in here, that image shall be inside this box. And we can determine the gap in between elements by margin. So first of all, we need to remove the white space because it's treated as text. So there is a white space in between here right now. That one we need to remove. And then we need to set margin on this input field, margin right, to negative the width of this image. And then this image will be right in here. Let us for a second do this also. So we have another example of negative margins here. So right here is our input field, and that one, now what the browser always does if we want to remove that white space, because these are elements that do not close. So therefore, once I bring that into a new line, it moves it in. And once I reformat my code, then this one happens again. So what I usually prefer here is to use the other option, what we have seen, and which is using comments. And whatever is inside comments will be ignored by the browser, and therefore there is no white space until here. And therefore there won't be any white space. So they are next to each other now. And now this input field I have given an ID search field. And that search field I will now give a margin on the right side of negative. Margin on the right side of negative the image width, which is 25 pixel right now, I think. Something like 25, but a negative. So there shall not be a further gap towards the magnifier. There shall be a less gap of negative 25. And here we go. Now this magnifier is inside. So this is how we can already create quite a number of things with the properties that we have gone over now so far. Now to complete this week, three more properties which we only go over in very briefly because there are not too many use cases for, at least for the first one we will go over very briefly. That is text overflow. And right now here we have text that is going horizontally over because we have set white space to no wrap, meaning it shall not go into the next line, it shall go over. And here we can set the overflow now to hidden. So let me set it on the green bar, on the child container, overflow to hidden. And now the text is cut, and this is default for text overflow. So there is actually also an option now, how do we want to treat that text? So in actual fact, this property here can only be used on text, and it depends on overflow and white space. It only works when there is in fact overflowing content, meaning if we have set white space to no wrap, then things are going over. And we need to cut it as well at overflow hidden. We need to set it as well. And then by default, what text overflow uses is clip, which clips it. What it does right now, just clips it up, it cuts it off. And what we can also use is ellipsis, and that one makes 3 dots then. And what we can also use is just whatever value we want to have inside quotation marks. So whatever we want in there, read more, something like this, whatever. But this one doesn't really, I don't see any use case too much. So I only briefly wanted to discuss it because it's right there under our topic of today. But read more, I mean, this shall ultimately be a link. It's a good idea to have a text and then read more, but this shall be clickable, and then we want to go to the real article, to the entire article. But it's only 1 line, first of all, not over 2 lines. Then the read more is not a link. So I don't see too much use case for it. If we want that with read more over several lines, we need to use JavaScript. So this is all I want to mention here concerning text overflow. Now the last two is word break and word wrap. Word break determines, first of all, let me now use white space no wrap must go, and I think I have set it on the yellow box as well on the parent, which gets inherited. So this one, here we go. Now the text is normal again, it's going into the next line. And what actually happens if the browser by default always puts things into a new line when there is white space only. That's the default value, which is great, because we don't want a word in the middle to be broken up and then the SO stands on the first line and the ME stands on the next line. And this is great. However, we still nevertheless have control over it. And let me therefore set this. This is word break, and here we can use break all for break all, and then it doesn't care, it doesn't mind anymore. Here it breaks it wherever it wants to. So here we have control over that one. And now comes word wrap. So for example, we want to keep it normal, but our box, for example, is only quite tiny. And that is too tiny. That's 20. Yeah, quite tiny. And we have a very large word, which I don't have one in mind now. Encyclopedia or something, a very, very, very long word, something. And what happens if that word exceeds the line? Let me write that right in here, inside here. Yeah. So let me make a very long word here. And here we go. Now, what shall happen to that word? And now, first of all, I need to remove the text overflow here, and then it's fine. So here, this word is now, the browser only breaks at whitespace, but now there is no whitespace where it can break into the new line, because that word is just too long. And this is where word wrap comes in. Word wrap determines when that word shall, whether long words shall be broken. And here we can say break word as well. Break word, and now this word goes into the next line if we have a long word. This is what word wrap is there for. And there is also another one that is keep all. It will keep everything as normal, but it will not, that is under word break all. This keep all is under word break. So if there is, so we are telling the browser, hey, with word break, still don't only break on whitespace, so not in the middle of a word, but keep all if we have break if we have Chinese, Korean or Japanese characters. So this is for all the Asian people that are listening. Then keep all will break all normal words that are English, but Chinese, Asian and Korean characters are broken. So in between as well. So there it doesn't matter. Yes, and this is it now though. And one more thing though, word wrap ultimately determines whether this long word shall be broken, and that one also can be used with plain HTML. So here we can determine where that thing shall be broken. Word break, WBRA, an element that doesn't close, it cannot have any content, it just determines where to break the word. And now this word is broken right there. So here we can also determine that with a straight normal HTML element. So this is it now, and what we have done today is we have introduced 3 more selectors, and we went over overflow and those properties that can only be used for inline level elements. And now we will take a break on code. Next week will be history on HTML and CSS, and we will discuss where those languages come from, who is in charge of releasing that code actually that we have been writing, and also what cascading means is very important. Cascading style sheets, that's what CSS stands for. Cascading, we will understand that next week. And also the browsers, they ultimately read the code, but do they need to comply with that code that gets released? Because there are many companies such as Google, Explorer belongs to Microsoft, or Safari browser belongs to Apple, and Chrome belongs to Google. Big companies are in the game here. Do they need to comply to that code that gets released, to our properties and our elements that we have? So these are the questions of next week. And then afterwards we continue with positioning, but we go into, I hope, a little bit maybe more exciting. That's going to be videos and images. Then we will be positioning multimedia. It's going to be our multimedia week number 1. We have 2 of them. And yeah, positioning. So this is the tough one here. And the rather tough one. And I think this week was a little bit, practice is theory will not master us, this only practice. So things are inherited here. And also I think the rather difficult ones were to the align height, vertical align. So yeah, and next week though we take a break, we go into history. And so half of next week will be informational. The other half we need to understand though, such as cascading, the C in CSS.